So today we are talking payments and we have Cormac Cahill from Klarna with us. Cormac's a commercial manager here, specialising in e-com, big tech and e-commerce background, so lots of value to be gained from Cormac's brain today. And for those of you who don't know Klarna, they probably have one of the coolest brands going in the e-commerce supply space, smooth payments as they would say, and the basic premise is that they allow customers to pay how they want, so that could be now, later or in installments, and they are really kicking some butt in the retail space. They've got people like ASOS, JD, Topman, Gymshark and H&M working with them, to name a few. So Cormac, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, good to be here.
Great to have you. So Cormac, payments is payments, right? Pretty dull stuff, pretty functional. What's all the fuss about? Why has there been this big resurgence or conversation going on about payments? What's changed?
So, yeah, payments used to just be payments. It used to just be this commodity that you would attach onto the end of your checkout or have in a store, and people would. In fact, actually, payments used to just be cash, so you would just go in and you would pay with cash. And then obviously there was the evolution to checks, credit cards, debit cards, and then smartphones. That kind of the evolution sort of grew with that. So obviously we saw a lot of innovation within the retail space, and that innovation is now sort of transferring over into the e-commerce space, where even just 4 or 5 years ago, merchants would have just had their card, their ability to take card payments, and then they would have had PayPal there as well. And PayPal was really the only sort of provider that was providing any sort of innovation within that space. But what we're sort of seeing is that payments is now really becoming a battleground for conversions and customer experiences, and the smarter merchants that are really sort of growing in this space and identifying where they want to be in 4 to 5 years' time are sort of saying that we need to have the payment space and our payments process as smooth and as frictionless and as easy as possible. There's some well documented statistics out there from the likes of Amazon, and I think Google have recently done something as well, where Amazon have now identified that for every 100 milliseconds in a delay in the checkout process, so just the checkout process, that results in a loss of a 1% sale. So over the course of a year, that can add up, especially for someone like Amazon, in millions and millions, if not tens and hundreds of millions in lost sales. So that's kind of, it's a battleground that people are really sort of seeing as this is where we can make it as easy and as frictionless as possible, because you've done all the good work to get them to the checkout. Sure. You don't want them to fail at that critical point.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the points there that really struck home for me, this whole battleground for CX, something that through the series we've talked about a lot, and I think one of the areas that obviously can cause a lot of, as you say, friction or pain is when I'm not able to process that transaction easily and when I'm also on the go. Yeah. So, I mean, with the fact that, for example, you've got like Instagram shopping or people being able to transact in Instagram, you've got a lot more people buying on mobile. That's obviously, I guess, been part of the driver, right, for why payments need to be easier than sometimes even getting your debit or credit card out. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, like there is... So the most amount of browsing on websites is now done through mobile, but the most amount of purchasing is still done through desktop. And again, it goes back to kind of where the trends are sort of going to. And if you're looking in 4 or 5 years' time, the merchants who will be able to convert that mobile browsing to mobile conversion and purchase will be the merchants who will be the biggest players in 4 to 5 years' time. Because what you're sort of doing is, you're on your bus, you're going home, you're checking out whatever app or whatever mobile site that you're just browsing. You're even maybe on Instagram, and you see something that you like, and you go through to the website, you go through to the checkout, and then you're sort of like you're bumping along the place, and it's you don't want to enter it in, and you'll say I'll deal with this later, and then you go onto your desktop. The likelihood is that you're never actually going to go onto your desktop. You're just going to forget about the purchase. Yeah. So it's literally like walking into a retail store and saying, I want to buy this, here's my money, no wait, I'll actually just walk out. And you're just leaving money on the table. And so the merchants who will be able to, bridge the gap is maybe not the right way to say it, but the people who'll be able to get more people to convert on mobile, where they're browsing more, they're going to be the successful merchants in years to come. And a lot of this has all been driven by new technologies within the payment space. Obviously, Klarna is most of our purchases are done through mobile. But then you look at Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, Google Pay, even PayPal then as well. They're all optimized to try and help you to check out as quickly as possible, and that is really powerful on mobile and on apps. And so it's the people who will be successful on the app side rather than relying on the sort of desktop side. And I've worked with merchants who have actually told us that in 2 years' time they want to make sure that the majority of all of their sales is through mobile, and then effectively they then want to actually turn off their desktop site and kind of just have it as like a beachhead almost, sort of this is who we are from a branding point of view, but actually everything is through the app. And that's a really interesting. Now they've done a lot of analysis into who their customers are and where they're actually the most value of their customers are and where most of their purchases are, where the trend is kind of going to. So merchants really need to sort of understand who their customers are, how they're buying, how do they want to buy, and then react and build to that. But I think as well, if you can convince them to be on mobile, you'll be in a better position as well.
Okay, amazing. So much to unpack there. I think one of the things I just want to make sure people listening really pick up on is that some of your points there, Cormac, for some of the people listening may seem unobtainable in the particular organization they're working with, right? The idea of the super future brands going and switching off their desktop sites. Some people might have fallen off their proverbial car seat, or hopefully not your car seat, if you're listening to this while driving, that would be dangerous. But I think the main thing that people can take away, regardless of what it is their plan is to do or how much they can do of it, is this idea of, are we looking at ways in which we can reduce friction and maximize on that intent? So whether that's through the payment options, speed of payment when you want to pay in specifically. There's lots of ways I think you're talking about here, but the overall theme is really this idea of make it easy if someone wants to buy something from you, and give them the options they want, which I think is something that everyone listening can really have a think about and understand is that something they're already doing, or is it a pain in the ass to actually complete a transaction with them? The one other thing I wanted to just dig into was, you mentioned about the evolution of cash to card and now it's obviously online, and you talked about that bus journey that you're on, or that we've all been on, I guess, and that if there is an easy way of transacting, you're more likely to. I read years ago a study that said people spend way more on card than they do on cash because there's less physical exchange. There's something about us counting out the £20 notes that makes it seem more expensive. Is that also similar in terms of that intent maximization? So the ease of tapping a card allows me to transact based on a more initial emotive want, right? I see something, I take it to checkout, I tap, it's very seamless. And are you talking really now about how mobile needs to replicate that very almost seamless 1-2 tap experience in order to maximize on the intent that we're getting in a store or getting when we're in the real world?
Yeah, I would. There's a lot in that, and it's in terms of whether people actually spend more on their card as opposed to cash. I'm not sure on that, but I can probably safely say that people will spend more often on card than with cash.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself, I don't deal with cash anymore at all.
You're a cashless man.
I'm a completely cashless man, and the reason for that is you spend £4.80, that 20p is gone. It's just gone to the birds. It doesn't exist anymore. Whereas with card, you get the maximum out of all of the money that you actually have, and this is again where I think the trend is kind of going to where people don't want to just lose their pennies down the sofa. They want to be able to spend all of the money that they have, sort of that evolution going over now to some of the other payment methods is obviously you want to make it as easy as possible. So again, I've made a huge move over now to using my phone to sort of tap in cafes and even for purchases up to that £30 limit. It's just constantly on my phones, on Google Pay and Apple Pay, because I'm just one of these guys who have two phones that aren't compatible. It's trying to make it just as easy as possible, because if somebody wants to buy, putting any sort of blockers in place are going to stop you converting more people. And sometimes this isn't just a payment method thing. A lot of the time it can be how you actually have designed your checkout flow, even before you get to the payment section. I mean, I've seen websites where they ask consumers to put in 6 different pages of information before you get to the payment section. And every single one of those is a barrier that the consumer has to get over, and then they would probably drop out at some stage. So you're just making it more difficult, and none of this is to do with the payments, it's getting them to the payments. So, if some people are sort of saying that I don't work with PSP providers who will be able to give me all of these options, okay, fine, maybe let's take a step back and look at, can you make it easier? Can you remove some of the barriers before you even get to the checkout to sort of make it as seamless as possible? Can you put the entire checkout process onto one page where it's, your address, your name, your billing, and then the payment information, and have that all in one page? And again, think about that from a mobile perspective, where you're on the go, you're flipping between 3G and 4G. These are sort of real life scenarios of what will stop somebody from making a purchase, and you really just want to make that as easy as possible, because as we said, you've done all the good work, you've done personalization, you've done email marketing, you've done social campaigning, you've spent all this money to get someone to put something into their basket. Why are you making it difficult for them to check out?
Makes sense. So yeah, I think for our listeners here, if you are doing, as Cormac says, the good stuff that we hope you are, and the stuff that we've been talking about in the series, I guess the key thing is, are you now also going and making sure that the money maker, right, the actual part where it all comes to some beautiful crescendo, are you making sure that that is easy and intuitive and painless, or are you making it difficult to do business with? And I think one of the things that maybe people can do straight away is, have you been through your own checkout recently?
Yeah,
have you tried to buy on different devices? Have you gone through the process of trying to be your own customer? Dog fooding, as they call it, I think, in the States, eating your own dog food. Have you gone through that process? And as Cormac says, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to make some drastic changes to your payment providers from day dot, but maybe there are some really easy, quick wins that just by being more active as a potential customer of your own business or of your own site, then you can maybe achieve those. One thing I want to just dive into is, sometimes I'm now going through checkouts who obviously are embracing this philosophy, right? And I get hit with, do I want to pay through Amazon? Do I want to pay through Apple? Do I want to pay through Google? Do I want to pay through Shopify? Do I want to pay through PayPal? Do I want to pay through debit or credit card? Are we getting to a point where there's too many options, where it's almost like mass payment confusion, and that in itself is going to be a downside? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and it's one that we get a lot from merchants, where they'll sort of say, I want to just have a very clean checkout. Well, actually, we've never had any sort of an argument from a consumer as to say, there's too many options, I'm just going to leave. What we actually see is, wow, my option is actually presented here, and I'm going to use that one to check out. So, if somebody wants to use Amazon Pay or Apple Pay, then the option should be there for them. If somebody wants to use Klarna, the option should be there for them. If you're looking internationally and you're selling to, an international audience, say into the Netherlands, Ideal should be there. If you're selling into Germany, Sofort should be there. You need to take into account, that people will want to use the payment methods that they want to use, and if the payment method isn't available, then they may leave to go somewhere else, where the worst case scenario is that they leave your site to go onto a marketplace to buy your product off that marketplace, where you have a lower margin, and because that marketplace offers the payment method that they want to check out with. So you sort of need to, the payment space is, I totally understand that some people will sort of say that there's a ton of options out there, and I was looking at some of there was an ecosystem graph that I saw the other day, and there was literally, I'd say, 200 companies on this ecosystem. Some of them aren't consumer facing, but many of them would be consumer facing, from the likes of wallets. You've got obviously different payment methods then as well, some of the services like the Apples and stuff, but then as well you've got the emergence of sort of Bitcoin stuff, and with Libra from Facebook recently now as well, as to see how that is going to increase. And then so the amount of brand names and payment methods out there can seem overwhelming. But what merchants should really do is try and understand who their customers are, what is the age demographic, how much are they actually spending, how often are they spending, and try to serve them the options that you think would actually convert them the quickest and the fastest. And we see some terrible stuff that we see is that merchants get too into this, almost where they put Apple Pay on the desktop on Chrome, and of course that doesn't work. So you need to sort of look at who the consumers are and how are they purchasing, and then serve them up the payment methods according to the devices and the ways that they are actually communicate, engaging with you. Apple Pay doesn't work on Chrome, if anybody wants to actually know.
Pro tip.
Yeah, it only works on Safari. So yeah, pro tip.
Okay, cool. And I think actually that's really interesting, which is that if, you don't have to think about payments as a single entity. So we offer, for the business, we offer these payment methods. Actually, what you're saying is you should be looking at the types of device, the type of journey they're going on, and you should be moderating the right payment methods for that device and for that journey. So not just having, as you say, Apple Pay is now part of our ecosystem, therefore Apple Pay goes on our desktop site.
Yeah.
What we're saying is you should be thinking about, we need to make sure on mobile we have easier ways to check out that are less painful, because we're on the bus, we're shaking about, whatever it is. But on desktop, it's fine to maybe just have Visa and debit and Klarna or whatever the product range is, because you're going to be hopefully sat at home. You're unlikely to have your laptop on the bus, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what we're sort of seeing now as well is, some of this might feel quite overwhelming as to, oh my God, I've got so much to think about here. And, so there is going to be a huge amount of payment methods to take into consideration. So some of the advice to the merchants then would be to look at the PSPs and look at the payment service providers who can offer the most amount of options through their own services. So you're not integrating 4 or 5 different payment methods onto the back end of your website every single time, which can be costly and time consuming. You would integrate one service and then you would configure what options you actually want to show. And that can also mean that from a mobile perspective, the PSP would then control what options are actually shown from a device and a PSP perspective as well. So you're getting that optimized experience without kind of doing too much. And we're going to see this as well. So that can be done through the PSPs, but also we're seeing the e-commerce platforms actually reacting to this as well. Shopify, for example, will not show Google Pay if you're on Safari, and vice versa with Chrome and Apple Pay. They just won't show it, so it won't appear on your site, but it will dynamically show on your site if you configure it on the Shopify backend. And then with Klarna, for example, we're not in say the likes of France, Italy, and Spain, but we are in the Nordics, in Germany, the UK, and the US. And so if you're coming into a website from those countries, Klarna will then show for those countries as well. So consumers who are outside of our regions won't be shown Klarna, which of course they would then be declined for.
Right.
So there's a lot that is going on in the background that you don't really need to kind of worry too much about if you have the right services set up to be able to deal with all that complexity. So it's not as daunting as it may sound.
So sigh of relief for the technophobes among you, or for those people that often, when we talk to e-commerce brands, I'm sure you find the same thing. They're backlogged, right? They've got a huge development queue all the time. They're always needing to build things. Some of those things are really big. Probably re-platforming every couple of years seems to be a theme. Re-platform is never done on time ever. So I think what's a really valuable point is that you don't have to see it necessarily as this really painful task where you're going to have to go in and set up all these different rules, set up all these different systems, customize it based on the different site they're on, the different device. There are services available, whether it's Shopify, whether it's PSP, that is a one-hit install, and then you can configure on the back end. It does the legwork for you, right? So much less effort, I guess, to get started with this kind of stuff, which is great. I just want to zoom in something you said earlier in terms of the instant gratification piece and how many payments offers are needed, and you mentioned on kind of making sure it's right for your audience. How much of the payments and instant payment stuff is just for us, avocado on toast millennials, and for our successors, the Gen Zers? How much of this is just being driven by us? If I'm selling to the 40s, the 50s, whatever it is, is this conversation irrelevant?
It's definitely relevant. I mean, if we were to just sort of zoom in, I suppose, on Klarna's consumers, with Klarna you're able to get the good before you actually have to pay for it. So, that works really well for the millennial generation. But what we find is we have consumers, I think we recently looked, we have a consumer well into their 80s. We have a couple of them there. So we go all the way from 18 all the way up, all the way up to, to your 18, 90-year-olds, which is great. So it's a new type of payment method that seems to work for all different segments and ages. And so in that sense, you're sort of saying that the instant gratification, the I want it now, is actually not just a millennial Gen Z type of desire.
Yeah.
It's a desire that is now permeated through every single age group all the way up, and that's sort of been driven by just culture itself at the moment. You know, everyone, it's the on-demand society. If you want to go watch a TV show, you'll go onto BBC iPlayer or Netflix.
Yeah.
You know, it should be the same as if you want to buy something, you should just be able to hold your thumb down onto the phone and be able to purchase it there straight away. So you'll probably see more demand from the Gen Z and the millennials. And to be honest, you should listen to them, because they will be your consumers for the longer amount of time than some of the older generations, and they will be the first adopters of technology. And if you lose them early, then you know they will go somewhere else. So you definitely need to listen to them. So you know the instant gratification is kind of for everybody. So you need to kind of cater to everybody for that. But there's something that's very kind of interesting in that. Obviously, so again with Klarna, it's you know, you can sort of think of it as an invoice style payment. This is actually how normal people, everybody, this is how they pay in the likes of the Nordics and in Germany. If you are to go sell into Germany and you don't offer an invoice style payment, it's the same as selling in the UK without offering the ability to pay with Visa. You know, it's that ubiquitous within the German market and the Nordic market. So again, it's, you know, in the UK we're probably being seen as much more Gen Z millennial focused at the moment, but you know we have proof from other markets that it works everywhere, and it works for everyone in how they want to use it, and it goes back to that philosophy of giving people control and flexibility to pay how they want to.
Amazing. While you were talking about that, actually, with the instant gratification and things, I agree. I mean, it was kind of a leading question in some sense, but I think, you know, your view is completely correct, and it reminded me a lot, actually, of my mum, who I hope she won't mind me saying, but is in her 70s now, and she bloody loves Apple Pay. I mean, she taps everything, everywhere, all the time, Tesco's, buses, you know, the whole 9 yards. I think she enjoys coming to London just because she can tap more places than where she lives. So, but I do think it's an important point, you know, this idea of, you know, the fuddy-duddy silver hair brigade. You know, so many of her friendship group and people in their 60s and 70s have and are being gifted this technology by their sons and daughters, typically who are a bit older than me, but, you know, in their 30s or 40s, we're pushing that up the chain. And so those consumers are allegedly the ones with all the money, and so if you need to cater to those people as well as to the younger demographic, and they will have their expectations change as well.
We call them the silver surfers.
Silver surfers
is the character we have.
Yeah, indeed, tech granny. And I think the other thing that was quite interesting, which I think people really need to pay attention to, is this idea of, you know, getting it wrong for the Gen Z and the millennials is a real red flag. I think that's something that's not talked about enough. Is actually, it's a great litmus test for brands that if the Gen Z and the millennials give up or get pissed off or leave, it probably means it could definitely be easier.
Yeah.
Because they're the hardest to please, I guess, in category, right? Gen Z, millennials, and then whoever else, baby boomers and so on.
And what we see is what's really interesting. So it's a kind of a comparison between the two of them and similarities, but then how they're sort of subtly different. We look at millennials are very interested in brands. So if you can create a really good brand, then millennials are more likely to keep on going back to you, and that's how they sort of portray their loyalty. With Gen Z, they are much more loyal to experiences and authenticity. So if you can create something that gives the impression to a Gen Z person that this is just for them, then that's their type of loyalty. But then what both of these categories of generations do not want is they do not want to be tied into something. And so this is where we're seeing the real move away, for a number of reasons, away from credit cards. And again, that has obviously been a massive payment method over the past 50 years. And now we're seeing a real decline in credit cards for those generations, because there's a mistrust. They're tied into a long-term agreement, and there may be some of these fees that they're not too aware of. So what can give them the flexibility and the affordability issues without having them tied in? And to plug Klarna's payment method of the Pay in 3, we give people that ability to spread the cost over 3 installments with our Pay in 3 solution, and then that's it. There's no fees, there's no interest, there's no long-term tie-in, so you're able to get the experience of having a credit card without having a credit card, and it's becoming very, very popular. And so that's something to kind of keep an eye out for as well, is if you're targeting those Gen Z and Millennials, there are those subtle differences, and how can you target them in the right sort of way. And again, it's very odd to sort of say, but you can do that with the payment method.
Amazing, yeah. And one of the things when you were talking about how you target, I think there's been some definite stuff coming up in the news recently of brands who have tried to position themselves against authentic causes, kind of insincerely, or they've kind of tried to feign some sort of authenticity, and the backlash has been quite bad in the sense of people not seeing them live those values. And so I think it's funny to say it out loud, but you can see how flexibility, if that was something, or honesty or openness or transparency or whatever it is, ease, if that's part of your brand ethos, then what are the pinch points that doesn't deliver that, or that don't deliver that, if my English was better, and how can you then tweak those things so that they actually all sync up and all line up better? And so I guess if you're listening here, what is your proposition, what is your promise to that, especially to that Gen Z or millennial audience, and are your payment methods and payment structures, I guess, aligning with that? If you're saying you're simple to do business with, you're easy, you're honest, you're open, you're fair, whatever, no quibble returns, all this kind of crap, is that linked up with, say, how you can pay, and that you don't have to actually lose the money or have the money come out of your account while you try on your 12 ASOS dresses or whatever it is until you send them back? And I think that's a really important point, and something that I wasn't expecting to say coming in here. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of touch on just that returns piece. I mean, that's obviously quite it's a question that we always get from merchants as well. And some of the stuff that we sort of see from our own. We recently did an analysis just in March this year, and we found that so it was 84% so 84% will not reshop with you if the returns process is terrible. So that means that you've brought them in, but then you've given them a bad experience if they want to return something, and that could be for a myriad of reasons. So you want to make that process as easy as possible. And with Klarna, obviously you can receive the good, try it on, and if you don't want it, you can send it back. Nothing has left your account. So that means you don't have to wait 10 days to get your money back. You can then go back to the merchant, and you can make a repurchase for a new size or for another item as well. So that's a really positive experience. And with Klarna, with the Pay Later product, we do see sometimes, some merchants do see an increase in returns, and that is something that we don't shy away from. But what we see is, because you're giving a positive experience, that consumer comes back to you more often than they would do with card. And we see, I think it was in the style, this is a public stat, I think it was something like, they had a 47% increase in order frequency. So that means people were coming back to their site to purchase with Klarna 47% times more than with card, which is a huge, just from a payment method, is a huge increase in just adding something to the checkout. You wouldn't see that with we've got Amex. It's not really the same type of appeal. So there's certain experiences, and it goes back to that original idea of, you've done so much good to get them to this point. Don't make the payment process, the payments section, don't put any barriers in place. And actually, what can you do to improve the experience at that point and create a sort of delight around making a purchase at the very end? And that could be, I've got the good before I have to pay for it. And try it on. This is great. Nothing's come out of my account. And then when you're happy to pay for it, you pay Klarna for it.
Yeah, and when you were talking about that, one of the images I had in my mind was of my dear wife, who anytime there is a big event coming up, will second my credit card to fill it up with all the different potential outfits that she might want to have for that occasion. And then we go through this process of, have you sent it back? Oh, shit, no, I forgot. Oh, okay, well that's whatever it is, 80 quid down the drain or whatever it is. And I think as well, we've been in situations where, because those items haven't matched or whatever, but there's obviously been a huge amount of expenditure going out while we're waiting for those things to come back, where then she's gone and borrowed something instead, for example, or whatever it is. So I think that methodology that you're talking about, right, which is, I want to be able to try the product before I buy the product, is essentially what you guys are enabling. It's very much in line with what consumers want to do. I guess one of the things that I just wanted to sort of try and dig into a little bit more was around the retail-centric nature of this. So is this just, and is payments just something, and paying later just something for people who are selling clothes, sneakers, shoes, and the like? You know, is there a maximum kind of threshold here where if your basket value is over 100 quid, if you're not, you know, Boohoo or Pretty Little Thing or ASOS or whoever it is, does this not matter to you, or does this not, do you not need to pay any attention to this?
So, again, going back to the evolution of payments, you know, in the past couple of years, you look at some companies and you could argue that they are in fact payments companies. Uber, for example, it provides you with a taxi service, but it's so tied into how you actually pay. The reason why you go back to it so often is because it's so easy to pay. Netflix, the whole business model is based around that subscription type, you know, and you can cancel it whenever you want. Payments is intrinsically built into it and as an experience. You know, even though I haven't shaved in quite a while, I do have a suspended membership with Harry's.
Yeah, this isn't a great plug for Harry's, by the way.
Suspended great brand. But you know, it's suspended at the moment, and I will go back to it eventually. But yeah, I'm able to pause my payments with it, and you know, every 5 weeks I'll get new blades, and that business models are now being built around evolutions in payments.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting sort of model, and you know, one that is quite fascinating. So you know, payments isn't really just for the likes of selling items, you know, whether it be in store or online. It can be around sort of selling services,
Sure.
Which you know gets really interesting with Klarna's sort of payment methods. We do try and make a bit of a distinction between, say, the pay later is much more suited to an online scenario, because obviously you're receiving the products before you try them on, and effectively what that is that's the experience you would get in store, where you would go into a store, get 2 sizes of something, go into the fitting room, and then try them on and keep the one that you want. So it's giving that experience in you know, at home, and you know, we see. For example, one of our big areas that we're really successful in is with new mothers, where you know they obviously have a young baby at home, and they may be wanting to buy clothes for that baby or for themselves, but they don't really want to go into town maybe just yet. You know, this gives them the experience that they can potentially buy some things, try them on at home, and that, you know, say if they, you know, even if they return, say 4 out of the 5 items that they bought, they're much more likely to go back to you because you've provided them with that experience.
Sure.
With the installments product, the one where you split it out into 3 equal installments, and you can use your debit and credit card for that, that is suited to both online and offline, because in the offline experience you're still kind of, you know, giving that affordability where you can walk into a store, pay for a third of the item right now, and then leave the store, and in 30 days time will automatically debit your card, and then in 60 days will automatically debit your card again. So that works online and offline as well. These don't particularly work within the services space, because you can't really get a service and then return a service, if you get what I mean. But the whole sort of payment space is, you know, if you are offering a service like something that could benefit from a subscription type of model, you 100% need to be looking at payments and how you can optimize the payments process to make your business successful. Because if that isn't successful, you're not going to make any money. So you really need to hone in and look at that space. And
is there though like an upper threshold of monetary value or something around that? So, you know, let's say I'm going to go and buy a diamond ring, or a new mattress, or a new kitchen, or something that is going to cost me hundreds or thousands of pounds. Does the payment conversation stop mattering as much, like because my commitment's much higher? Is there a market there? Do you if people are listening and they're working in maybe luxury goods or high value e-com, what are the things that they need to bear in mind, and is that any different to what someone selling £5-6 dresses should be bearing in mind?
There would be differences, but at the same time, again, you know, if you're a luxury retailer and you are you know, selling dresses that are £8,000-9,000, most of your orders are probably coming through credit cards or Amex. So whether you like it or not, you are actually offering a credit facility. And so, we'll see some pushback for Klarna anyway, where they go, if we add Klarna, we think that's more for fast fashion rather than luxury. But the reality is that you're taking a lot of payments that are in credit. And as we sort of said, the Millennial and Gen Z generations are moving away from the credit card, and they want this other experience. So you're just kind of, moving with the times to offer them a type of payment method that your consumers now, and particularly into the future, will be more, you'll attract more of them, and you'll be able to convert more of them. Obviously, there is then a question then that kind of goes into, if you're looking at items that are going, say, £5,000 and more, you need to start offering more full finance and fully regulated finance products, and that's where things kind of get a bit more complex in terms of the information that we need to have to be able to make the right decision based on your information that you have and that you're able to provide us with. But we also need to make sure that we're just not an open line of credit. And this goes to any of these finance providers, that it can't just be an open line of credit, that people need to be able to afford it regardless of whatever the value actually is. They do need to be able to afford it, and we definitely don't want to be getting anyone into trouble in any way. So there are subtleties there. There are there's different ways that you need to look at it.
Things to consider, definitely, I think. So essentially what we're talking about is below that £5,000 threshold. There's probably something you could do with responsible lending or different payment options. I think, again, there's that misconception that perhaps over a certain value, people won't buy it online. Right? But that's not necessarily true. There's lots of markets that have bucked that trend, and therefore that even everyone in the space should be looking at our online payment options as easy as they could be, whether I want to pay for my sofa on Apple Pay or Klarna or Amazon or whatever it is, that they're not excluded from that just because they're selling something really high ticket, in terms of making it easy and making it simple. And I think the key point that I really want to make sure people take away here, which you talked about earlier when we were talking about you might get more returns, but those returns are easy, is this idea of we've got to think about the overall experience of the lifetime of the consumer. And stop looking at maybe micro transaction data and saying, for example, we shipped out 10 products and we got 5 back, whereas we used to ship out 5 and get 1 back. But what's that 10 doing? Well, it's exposing them maybe to more of your product range, it's encouraging them to buy more frequently, it's building brand loyalty, it's doing all these other things that maybe are more intangible. But to your point, that's then building up that lifetime, which is so hard to acquire the customer, that you really want to be squeezing in a nice way, but squeezing and keeping them in your ecosystem for a long time. So I think if you're listening, maybe look at try and, when it comes to payments and returns and return rates, we need to be looking at and thinking about the bigger picture here, and not looking at maybe the incremental differences in individual users. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of kind of subtle ways that you can change how you're trying to attract consumers as well, where I sort of feel, so maybe I'm just a little bit more into this and sort of seeing it a bit more, but I'm seeing a lot more merchants now deliberately make the decision to move away from the discounting culture. And because that's obviously been a large sort of draw on the margins of merchants for the past 3 to 4 years, and I'm sort of seeing a lot more merchants deliberately move away from that. And how they're moving away from that is so they're using the likes of they're going on to Instagram, and they're being in the place where their consumers are, who then make an impulse decision to go and buy it. Whereas before, you would have sent out an email saying 20% off for the next 24 hours, and that would have been the sort of impetus to go and make an impulsive decision. So obviously, being in the place where your consumers are to make an impulsive decision for full value is way more valuable. And we're seeing some merchants then as well use the likes of Pay Later to replace the 10% off first time purchase messaging with why not try before you buy. And that's sort of so in the pop-up messages or in the social media messages, rather than 10% off, try before you buy, and having the same impact. And they're not giving away the 10% margin for that first purchase. They're bringing them in for a full purchase amount. They may return it, but again, it's that experience, and they're definitely more likely to come back to you to purchase if you give them a good experience than if you give them 10% off.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. So I think that difference you talked about, right, of we're appearing in their inbox and we're trying to drag them from their inbox back to our website, versus they're already in their Instagram feed and we're appearing in their Instagram feed. But are we then thinking through how else that needs to change the behavior? I'm not going to be on my desktop, most likely. I'm probably going to be on the go. There's loads of other factors that then come into play when we're pivoting that strategy that you really need to think about when you're thinking about the end-to-end experience and therefore the payment journey as well. I just want to touch on lending, because you talked about that earlier. One of, I would assume, the criticisms of this kind of model is that we're getting people into debt, that retailers aren't being responsible by letting people basically buy stuff they don't have to pay for, right? It sounds great, run away with it or whatever. But what is your response to that? I mean, what are your thoughts on retailers being responsible and also is Klarna being responsible when it comes to how they manage that functionality?
Yeah, so it is a big question that we get at the moment, and we are doing a lot of work out there at the moment to talk to people, and there is a lot of information that we're actually putting out there to try and help people understand money a lot more. And this is kind of unbranded Klarna stuff, and it's just to create more education around that. But Klarna is we do have a clear goal to be responsible in everything that we do, and this sort of stems down into the likes of being very open, transparent, and honest about what our payment methods are. And we work, you'll see a lot of it in our branding and our messaging, that we're very sort of clear in what the payment methods are, and we do not charge any interest or fees ever to the consumer. So even if you are overdue, if you've forgotten to pay, there is no fee or there's no charge for that, and that is that's a unique to Klarna at the moment. We have seen, and we are very supportive of, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, the Financial Conduct Authority came out and said that they will be looking at the buy now pay later sector a lot more with a lot more scrutiny, and to make sure that people aren't being fined in any way or any excess fees being applied, and we absolutely welcome that as a move to make sure that all of the other people in the market offering similar type of payment methods will not be trying to make money from the consumer. And that's always been how Klarna has done it. We've never made any money off of the consumer. How Klarna makes its money is through a transaction fee from the actual retailer. So it's a cost to the retailer to offer Klarna as a service. But as I said, we are extremely open, transparent, and honest about what it is that the payment methods are. But we also try and give as much control back to the consumer as they can. So, for example, if you're coming up to your due date and you want an extra couple of days because you don't want to pay it off right now, you can go into the Klarna app and you can snooze your payment for an extra 10 days. There is no cost to that at all. It is giving the control back to the consumer about how they want to pay.
Amazing. The issues ostensibly about offering a buy now pay later is about getting people into long-term debt, and also being that debt spiraling, the Wongas of this world, right? Where it just compounds and compounds and compounds. It becomes an unbearable spiral where bad things happen. Really what you're talking about is offering people a facility in order to be able to pay for something later, but not punishing them for using that facility. There is no fee or charge. I mean, I remember actually I bought a mattress, and I did it on finance just because I'd rather pay per month. But I think there was still a fee, right? It was something like 3% more expensive or something over the 12-month period. And so in a way, you're right, I was punished for something that's more convenient, and someone made a few quid somewhere. Whereas your approach is much more about offering the functionality and giving the retailer the levy for being able to sell more product and do more things that are in line with what their customers want, rather than punishing the customer.
Okay. Klarna isn't an open line of credit. You're not going to be able to use Klarna across 50 different purchases across the internet and all these different websites. You would say, for example, if you had 3 or 4 outstanding invoices up to whatever, £200-400, we would probably decline you for the next one, because we'd say, we're going to wait until you actually start paying some of these off. So we would reject you from that point, and that's because we don't want people to get into that that long-term type of debt thing.
Sure.
Because that's just not going to be good for anyone. It's not good for us, and it's not good for the brands that are actually selling Klarna then as well. And also, so we do what's called a soft credit check on anyone who is coming into our network for the first time. So that is making sure that they do have a good credit history. They are over the age of 18. They are who they say they are. They are a UK resident. So there are checks that we have to go through, and we do a lot of fraud checks then as well. So it's all of that is to make sure that we are being responsible in who is actually using our services. So that means that we're not going to be able to accept everybody. And if you are being declined from us, because you have tons of different invoices out, that's probably a good thing. It's a good thing for the merchant who's not going to get a bad rep, and it's obviously a good thing for us because we don't want to get people into debt. And it's a good thing for the consumer because yes, they may be acting on impulse, but it's actually we're still controlling that they're not going to be getting into any of this long-term debt. So there's we are very responsible in that, and we're not going to force anyone into any long-term debt.
No bailiffs if you have too much ASOS then. Lots of steps and lots of checks and balances there though, which I think is great. And I think, responsible lending is obviously something that everyone's got on their mind from the Wongi stuff. So I think it's great to hear you guys have really taken a big step.
That is one of the biggest black marks, I think, on the industry, and it's something that we 100% do not want to be ever associated with.
Awesome. Let's just quickly cap through. There's one other area that I just wanted to cover before we get into the last part of the show, which is just the future of payments. I mean, what's going to happen? Are we going to eventually get to checkouts with 100 different payment options? Is there going to be like a consolidation event where one player becomes the de facto payment method, Apple Pay or Klarna or Amazon or whoever it is? A payment method is going to carry on with Libra and crypto maybe being accepted. Will the checkout eventually be just a long stream of different payment options? What do you see happening in the future?
So I envisage that more and more players will get into this market. Certainly in the short to medium term. I heard just one late last week that I think Fitbit Pay is something that's coming out now as well. So everyone is sort of looking at the payment space as something that is very interesting for them to kind of get into. I think Uber is launching or has launched a credit card. Apple is launching a credit card. There's so much more innovation I think is going to come from the payment space. So we'll probably see more and more payment methods come out. But so I don't really envisage a sort of a consolidation. It kind of goes back to the point that I was saying earlier, is that what I really see is that merchants will need to look at what are the providers and the platforms that I'm working with that can offer me the most amount of options in a dynamic way that can serve the consumers. So, as I said, if you're working with some of the payment service providers that can offer you configure like literally a flick switches of maybe 50 different payment methods that you could say, I want to offer Klarna in all of the Klarna regions, I want to offer Ideal in the Netherlands, I want to offer Amazon Pay to all merchants on Safari. Right. That's kind of how we'll sort of see it. So, it will hopefully get to a point where the payment methods that are being shown to consumers are the payment methods that are right for that consumer in the right market, served in the right way. And so I think that's kind of where it's getting to. And we could get to a point where there's hundreds of different payment methods, but you're not really worrying too much about it because the technology is taking care of itself to make sure the consumer is paying how they want to pay.
Okay, cool. So more access to more options is likely from payment methods, but really what you're saying is that to touch on the point you mentioned earlier, is finding those PSPs that are going to be the ambitious ones who offer you the right payment methods based on intelligent criteria, geography, device, maybe even demographic, who knows. And that probably is going to be where most of future innovation is for people listening. When you said about Fitbit Pay, I just had this immediate sort of Simpson-esque vision of people having their transactions declined for a cake or something, and it's like, no, stay on goal, run an extra 50 calories, people running on the spot. So Fitbit, that one's free if you're watching, but need to get rid of 50 calories before we authorize the payment. Fitbit Pay, wow. Okay, cool. All right, let's get into the last section of the show now. So questions we ask every show. First things first, what are the things that people are doing or can be doing right now to do the complete worst thing possible for improving payments? What is the thing that will destroy their efforts with making payments better? What are the biggest mistakes right now?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake that I continuously see is getting people to sign up to your newsletter before you allow them to get to the checkout.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's just like, why are you asking? I just want to buy the item, I don't want your newsletter. I may want your newsletter, but not right now because I'm trying to buy, and that is a huge drop-off point for consumers, and it's a major basket abandonment area. So what I would say is, have a look at your checkout and just make sure that it is, before you get to when someone goes to the basket, they click proceed to checkout, that it actually proceeds to checkout, that you're not sort of putting anything else in the way. And this could also be, sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't work. So when you click on the proceed to checkout, you'll see some merchants will have a pop-up that will say, you're trying to buy X good. A lot of consumers have also bought Y and Z. Would you like to add them to the basket? Sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't. If you're thinking about, so again, you have to think about what it is that you're selling. If you're selling lamps, maybe having a prompt to say, do you want to add these light bulbs to your basket, is a good idea. If you're selling something like a shirt, maybe saying, do you want to buy these pants, isn't really a good idea because they're there to buy a shirt, not the pants. Those are sort of some of the things you need to look at, like, are you putting anything in the way to getting them to actually purchase?
Yeah, for sure. I think the email thing's really relevant. I mean, the amount of times I've stood weirdly looking over people's shoulder to see how they're interacting with their inbox, and it's just delete. So I think the question is, what's the value in even that process versus the sale? And the other thing that I don't think is well understood, I saw something the other day, and just disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a GDPR expert, but that talks about the fact that after someone is a customer, opt-out is fine. It's only pre-customer that optional opt-in has to be required. Yeah. So actually there's probably a simpler way of you actually being able to communicate with them after they're a customer.
Yeah.
Right? You need their email probably to send them an order confirmation. So rather than going through some arduous, newsletter crap, get them to buy something from you, and then after that put them into your marketing funnel, right? Yeah. Get the transaction done is what you're saying.
Yeah, get the transaction done. We see, similar to the sign up for our newsletter type of thing, is create an account. It's like, why do I need to create another account? Yeah. So remembering your password, having that saved somewhere, it's completely pointless. Maybe you could do that after they've made the purchase, and we see some good merchants where the purchase will be made, and then you could have another sort of the final receipt page where you have the what you actually bought, payment method you used, when we're going to be delivered to, and would you like to sign up to some of our benefits that some of our deals that we could be doing for our members, type of thing. That's a better idea rather than getting everyone to sign up, because ultimately most people will just choose the guest checkout. But why are you even providing those as an option? Because again, that is a barrier.
Yeah, I think as well, people just need to think a little bit more about, realistically, is your product or brand something that I buy regularly? And is it something that would be advantageous to have an account for? If I'm buying, I guess, like a bike from you, I probably don't really need an account because I'm probably not going to buy another bike for a while, all being well. If I'm buying something that maybe is a regular purchase, or maybe it's more like fast fashion, or the ASOS is as well, where I'm going to go and buy stuff a lot from you, it's going to be easier for me to have an account and manage it all there with my refunds, returns, and blah blah blah. And also, I guess if it's a product that you're selling that is high configuration specs, there's lots of things to choose from every time, then maybe having an account might be a good idea. But like you say, not necessarily forcing everyone to make that selection, and also maybe offering it after the fact, right? You've now purchased. Do you want to create an account in one click? And you click yes, and it just sorts it out for you, right? Job done. Okay, so make it simple. Stop putting barriers in front of everything. Get people to pay. Let's deal with the marketing capture and stuff following that, and let's go from there. Let's get the money first. Jerry Maguire, guys, show me the money. Awesome. Right, top secrets and tips. What are the things that you keep in your wheelhouse and your secret Klarna briefcase that people can take away and put into action?
Yeah, so from a Klarna perspective, the merchants who benefit the most from adding the payment method are the merchants who advertise it. So when I'm speaking to merchants, I ask them a lot of questions as to what are the actual things that you're trying to achieve. Is it, do you want to get new customers? Do you want to increase your conversion rates? Do you want to increase your average order values, increase your lifetime value of consumers? Most of the times they'll sort of say, yeah, we want them all. But okay, it's like, okay, that's fine, you want them all, but how are you going to actually portray that in a marketing message? And so we try and work with them to create, as I mentioned earlier, the replacing the 10% discount, first purchase discount, with a buy now pay later. That is not only appeals to someone who is maybe a new customer, but it also could appeal to someone who is a repeat purchase customer, but once is just about to abandon at the basket. But then you're telling them that, why don't you just buy it first and then you can pay later, or you can return it at no fee. A lot of the time when consumers receive the item, they go, yeah, I really like this, actually, I'm going to keep this. So you just want to get it into their hands and allow them to keep it. So marketing of a Klarna payment method is absolutely critical, because if someone doesn't know it's there, then it's never going to be a reason for them to get through to the checkout. So that's and so we do some things like we'll work with merchants on their own campaigns, we'll support campaigns, we'll do our own advertising of it. We've recently completed a pop-up in central London where we invited a number of our merchants down into the store down in Covent Garden, and these were merchants who don't have physical presence themselves, so it was kind of an experience for them as well, where they took the space and ran events in there and also sold some of their items in that store. So there's a lot that we do to try and help grow the merchants that we work with, but ultimately they're the ones who have to engage with us as well and sort of see the benefits of a new payment method. Some of the tools then as well is adding messaging onto the product page, whether this be Klarna messaging or purchase with Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, Google Pay on the product page itself, so you can actually avoid the entire checkout process. From a mobile perspective, that's really, really powerful.
So as in, you're able to check out on the product page?
On the product page itself, yeah. Which is it's really, really powerful. We have, if you're in the Klarna network and you click on purchase with Klarna on the product page, this is something that we're expanding out at the moment, but if you press on Klarna at the product page, we will automatically remember the payment method you want to pay with, and you will just click once more and then you've checked out. Again, with Apple Pay, you click on the Apple Pay button on the product page, hold your phone down, you've made the purchase because all your information is already saved there. Yeah. So those are some of the things. Again, it's removing barriers, making it smooth as possible, and from an impulsive perspective, you've seen something you want to buy, I just want it now.
Yeah, it's
the gratification side of things, and we have these tools now that you can cater to that instant gratification.
Amazing. I love the in-product thing. I think that's really cool. So main kind of, I guess, key takeaways there, or your tactics and strategies, is around that promotion. If you're offering these easier payment methods, whether it's Apple, Amazon, Klarna, Google, whatever, Libra in the future, then let's make it easy. Let's advertise it. Let's make sure that when you land on the site, maybe you've got your icons displayed or something like this, especially if it's a newer payment method or a more competitive payment method, perhaps. In product page checkout, I love that idea. I think that's really, really super cool. So if you can look at testing that or implementing that specifically, I guess on mobile, that would work amazingly well. And then the other one I just wanted to add back in for you, which is your top secrets and tips, but I'm going to add it in for you, is just the constant theme I think of this has really been about, is the experience frictionless or is it painful? And just looking at how that process runs end to end, from coming to the site all the way to going to the end, and seeing how well that works and making it easy to do business with you, I think is something you've kind of touched on a number of times. And so with that being said, give us one parting thought, right, and a practice that everyone can go and put in practice today, be it a tactic, a strategy, or an idea. What's one thing everyone can do right now?
Yeah, the easiest thing that anybody can do right now is understand what your end-to-end process actually is. You would be completely fascinated as to how many merchants don't actually know how people enter their site and how they leave their site in a successful scenario. What's that actual process? And they should do that on Chrome, Safari, all the desktops. They should do that on mobile, do it on Android, do it on Apple, do it on everything. All the touch points where your consumers are, go through that entire end-to-end process and see where the customer could actually drop out, but also see how long it takes for them to get actually through the point when they have an item in the basket. How long does it take them to actually complete the purchase? And that is, again, it's removal of barriers. One website that I would sort of point you in the direction to, one that I think has done a really, really good job, is the shoe brand Axel Arigato. So quite a high-end shoe brand, but they make it really, really simple. You get to the product page, you add item to the basket, and then you click on the basket page, and then you have this one page where you have a drop down of this country is already selected for you, and the payment methods are displayed for you immediately. And then actually, if you then change the countries, the payment methods will then change according to those countries that you selected. So nice. The payment methods are quite right. So it's a real sort of like a good use case to kind of have a look at. But again, it's all in one page, and you would add in your billing information. The tick is already there for billing is same as shipping, and then you just check out, and it's really, really just one page, one step. And I can imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that it being quite an expensive shoe to buy, that they really are optimized to try and capture people who want to make that purchase, rather than them maybe spending 1 or 2 more seconds thinking about it, going, do I really need to spend £250 on a pair of shoes? I don't know. So they've identified that they need to make it as easy as possible, and they've done a really, really good job at that. So key thing is to go and look at your how long does it take someone to check out when they actually want to make that purchase, and do that across all your devices, and then optimize from there.
Amazing. And I guess as well, one of the points you made earlier, just capturing that Axel Arigato, I said that right? A luxury brand, you want a luxury experience, and luxury experience means paying free, right? That's what makes a first class. Yeah. You go to first class, not that I've been, but you go to first class airline or whatever it is. The idea is the checkout's really easy. You go to the lounge. There's no fuss. You board last. You get off first. So every touch point is supposed to be super, super simple. You've got fast passports and all that other stuff. Equally, if you're a luxury brand, is that fast, is that painless, is that easy, or is it a complete pain in the ass? If it's a pain in the ass, you're going to be having an issue with your brand and your perception. Yeah. And then, so Cormac's parting tactic, I'd encourage you to do this today. Get your team around, grab all your mobile devices, grab all your tablet devices, grab all your laptop devices, and get a stopwatch, and you're saying from having added something to the basket, how long does it take me to get through and actually become a customer with you, actually have given you my money, or in Klarna's case, promised to give you my money and they've given you my money, whatever it is. But how long does that process take? And what do you learn from it, I guess? Where does it piss you off having done it, with it being your website? Because if it's pissing you off and it's your website, Lord only knows it's going to be pissing other people off a hell of a lot more than that. Amazing. Cormac, it's been great. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Been great to have you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Cheers,
buddy.